Thank you for joining us in the Growth Now movement. We are Justin and Zach, two entrepreneurs who wanted to bring you people's amazing stories of inspiring growth in business and in life. So let the growth begin. Hey guys, Justin and Zach here. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am really excited about our guest today, Bob Paff. Bob is a highly sought-after communications expert, motivator, and author. He's been featured on Fox, CBS, ABC, and is the new voice of National Geographic. His book, Communicating to Win, is a bestseller and touches on things that are holding you back from success, love, happiness, and a peace of mind. Today, we're going to dive into things like why this message and why now, how he felt while writing the book, how it felt to be so vulnerable and put his life story out there, and how communication affects the world we live in today. With all that being said, we're just going to get right into the episode. We hope you guys enjoy it as much as we did. Thank you so much for being on the show, Bob.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about it, guys. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on the show and talking to us. We really appreciate it. I know you're busy with the book that came out last year or in 2014. And basically, to get started, do you just want to tell us a little bit about yourself and, what's going on in your life right now?
Well, the book actually came out in 2015.
15, sorry. Okay.
That's okay. It's done very well. It's we've sold over 4,000 copies. I like to say organically, all through social media. And, everything's just been word of mouth. So, God, what's going on? I mean, every day is a different event. I reinvented myself in 2010, went back into my media career, and then did the book. And I've had regular segments on Fox and CBS Radio and different things over the years. So we got a big book signing event coming up in next week, the Thursday, the 25th of February in D.C.
Right, and that's actually why I said DC earlier, but we'll be sharing that on our Facebook page and all that good stuff. And
appreciate that.
Yeah, and I got the link so everybody can go to the Eventbrite, buy the tickets, and it seems like an amazing event. But obviously, the book that you wrote is called Communicating to Win in Life, Love, and Business. What kind of drove you to that topic and that idea and decided to write a book about it?
Well, really the book, Justin, is a transparent look at my life, and it's all the things that candidly. I'll say I did wrong, but my whole premise on communication is nobody really teaches us how to communicate. If we're lucky, our parents taught us social skills, but nobody teaches us how to communicate. So we grow up not knowing what we want and how to ask for what we want. We're programmed from a very early age, and we're think about it this way, guys. We're always listening to parents or teachers or older siblings or girlfriends or wives or husbands or other people telling us what to do, how to do it, when to do it. Good or bad. And then suddenly, I think some point in life, I'm in my 50s now, we have some crises in our life. We all do. And we stop and think, hopefully we do. We stop and think about, what do I want? And how did I get here? Quite honestly. And so having been married twice and having 6 kids, which is... a lot for anybody. Right?
Yeah, it's a handful, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's a handful, and it never goes away. My oldest son's name is Zach, and he never goes away. And he's 30 years old.
Okay.
But so really, I started speaking on the public circuit a few years ago, and then I decided I wanted to write a book. And I said to a friend, I want to write a book. And Paul said, Bob, your book is in your talks. He was right. I started looking at all of my talks that I do on various topics: leadership, team building, attitude, morale, sales and marketing, all of these things, and wrote the book. So that's really how the whole thing happened. It was more of a catharsis for me, but it's turned into certainly a journey, and other people have just... I got to tell you guys, it's big in Europe. It's really crazy. I've got a huge following in Australia and Scotland and oh my God, England, and where the book is being translated into French and Spanish as we speak.
That's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, really cool. Most of the people that follow me are women. Not a bad thing, but in fairness to them, and no offense to us, but women tend to be the more the emotional and the more sensitive sex, if you will. So they get it. So yeah, it's been a great adventure that we're just now, we're parlaying into other things. So that's kind of the background on that whole thing.
No, I'm really glad you said that and talked about it being, your personal stories that you learn from and your mistakes. I'm actually currently going through a journey of my own and jotting down my thoughts, and I'm kind of having a hard time taking my thoughts and putting it out on paper. What allowed you to be so transparent and really kind of put your life out there for everybody to read?
It's a great question. And one of the things that I'm constantly complimented, if that's the right word, on is my transparency and the fact that, I don't want to say I have no modesty or shame, but I don't have those guards up. I don't have those filters up. I don't know why. Mine is a faith-based message. I'm a practicing Catholic. I'm not born again. No offense to you or anybody who's listening is, but I don't, I didn't go through any sort of transformative religious experience, but my faith has always meant a lot to me. And so I never really, guys, I don't look at this as being about me. It sounds kind of strange. It is my book. But as a friend of mine in Paris said, she's embraced it and she'll tell you that it's changed her life. It's brought business opportunity to her. Wow. She said, it's my book. And so we use that term almost generically. I wrote it, but I want other people to find themselves in it. And that's really the coolest way to look at it. And people use it as a handbook. I wrote it as a handbook. It's only 100 plus pages. It's 16 chapters. But it is digestible. So you can actually go to, chapter 5 is letting go. And you can go to chapter 5, you can open up and say, oh man, I'm dealing with that right now. Let me just go there. And so you can get nuggets out of this thing. As I said, it's a guide, it's a handbook. People are dog-earing pages. They're highlighting it. They're going back to it multiple times and reading it. So this is my legacy. So I just don't, it was not a struggle, Justin, for me to be so transparent, to put it out there. So anyway, and at the end of the day, I'll try to keep my language really clean here. At the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what other people think. We get so caught up in what other people think. And when you stop and you ask yourself why, guys, the one thing that is unique to everyone and that nobody can take from you is how something makes you feel. And so what I tell people is when you get into these conflicts, how does this make me feel? If you're dealing with looks like you guys are partners, and if you're dealing with a partner and Zach does it one way and I do it another way, and I hate when Zach does that. And so we get into these conflicts because we all do, and we don't really know how to navigate out of it because you worry about what Zach's going to think. Zach worries about how you're going to take it, right? We do all this stuff. But really the truest person, the most important person you communicate with on a daily basis is yourself. I tell people all the time, everybody says, you guys have heard this, you need to love yourself first before you can love anybody else, that whole thing.
Correct.
Somebody talks to us about communication. You need to communicate with yourself first on a daily basis. What do I want? What do I need? How do I feel?
I'm so glad you said that. It's funny because I actually, after you started talking, the one question I wrote down was how important is it to communicate to ourselves? And
wow.
Do you find that a lot of people have trouble doing that? Because you said earlier on, it's important to know what you want and it's important to give that to yourself. It's almost like we have to communicate that much to us on what to do on a daily basis. Similar if you're a leader in a company or even, you being a leader of your family, you need to communicate that. Do you find that that's how you can affect people the most in their lives, them communicating to their self? Because it's almost counterintuitive. You want to communicate to other people. You don't think about communicating to yourself.
Yeah, we're programmed. The one word, Zach, that pops out when you said that is that we're programmed. And now I do this for myself. But listen, I built an insurance agency. I sit on 2 hospital boards. So it's not like I didn't come out of the corporate environment. Mm-hmm. I built and successfully ran an insurance boutique with clients all over the country. So I've been there and done that, sort of found myself in that business, didn't want to do. I grew up wanting to be a news anchor. I grew up, I went to college and studied communications and broadcasting, worked for 2 of the network affiliates. Got married the first time, and the wife did not want to move to a small market, so I could pay my dues to do that. I gave up my dream. So that's another great example. You're talking about writing the book is doing what other people expect of us. So I think we just become programmed, and somewhere along the line we forget about ourselves. And it sounds so selfish, right? We talk about what about me, and it's not when am I going to get mine?
Yeah.
It's really not that, because I think let's go back to the whole theory of loving yourself first, unless you're communicating with yourself, you're really no good for anybody else.
Yeah.
Right? So my father left when I was 10. I was in foster care at the time I was 16. I discovered my father's affair with my mother's best friend.
Wow.
And so that started me on, and I remember my mother begging me to let him come back home. And I said, Mom, I was probably too wise for my 10 years. I said, Mom, she said, oh, your father's changed. And I said, no, he hasn't. I just had this intuitive feeling that he was my father, but if you're not a good dude, you're not a good dude. It doesn't mean you're not, I can love you. I don't have to like you.
Right.
I don't have to like you. And so that started me on a path of saying yes when I meant no. And so that goes to that where we're just talking about communicating with yourself. Say to someone, I don't really want to do that. Well, I'd love to help you and good luck with that. And, I'm not your guy, or I just don't want to do that. I've done that. It's interesting too for me now, even when I date, which is rare. I mean, I've been single now for 6 years, and I don't want to date anybody with kids. Little kids. I've been there. I've done that. I saw somebody pushing a baby stroller today in the snow. And I tell you, if the light hadn't turned green, I had my phone in my hand. I was going to take a picture and post that sucker and say, I don't miss this for a second.
Yeah.
Just to put it out there. And I see people doing it. I'm like, I just get rid of my dog. I don't want to do that and stuff anymore. And so I've gotten better. It's taken me 50 plus years to get better at communicating with myself. And to sort of deprogram, if you will. And it's a great feeling. It's like the 800-pound gorilla is off your shoulders.
Yeah. And let me ask you this. A lot of people have a hard time looking internally and saying, well, what are my roadblocks, or what are the things that are kind of holding me back? What was your aha moment to say, hey, this is what I want. It's okay for me to feel that way.
I don't know. I don't know if there was an aha moment. When my second marriage ended in 2010. And she was my second wife, has gone on already to her third husband. I said, geez, I need a break. And then focusing on, because I'd never really put myself first. My first child was born when I was 25 years old.
Wow.
And now I look at my kids. My two oldest boys are 30, 29, and I have a daughter who's 23. I can no more imagine them being parents, but yet I was. So, when I attribute a lot of this stuff to, Justin, is my faith. I really, the worst times in my life, my father was homeless. I have a son who's attempted suicide 3 times.
Wow.
So I've been through a lot of stuff. And I tell people, and I don't say this so people can feel sorry for me. I say it because, they watch House of Cards, they listen to National Geographic, they maybe see my picture and they think, oh, what does this guy know about pain and suffering? What he's got, look at him. I tell people I've had more pain than joy.
Right.
I've had more pain than happiness. And why? God and I had some knockdown, drag out discussions, pretty colorful discussions. They're always one-sided. He never talks back to me. But, geez, if he did, look out. But, it's like, okay, I understand now. It really has taken me 50 plus years to understand why I've had to endure this. But, I wouldn't wish it on anybody. I wouldn't want to go through it again. I think it was given to me because of what I can do with it and because of what I am doing with this book. It's not a day goes by people are asking me about what's your next book or is this your only book or what else can I read that you've written? And I'm just like, wow, this was my therapy.
Right, yeah.
And although we do plan a series, because I think communication is the foundation of everything that we do. And again, it's amazing to me that nobody teaches us. My youngest is 13, my oldest is 30, so I've got kids still my daughter's in 7th grade, and so I'd like to get it into the school system. I think there's a lot we can do with the message. Anyway, it's my calling for lack of a better expression.
No, that's huge. And that takes us to, how does poor communication really affect the world that we live in? You know what I mean? You said you were trying to get into schools. Obviously to have that open communication with yourself at an earlier age is better, but how is it currently affecting the world that we're living in, and how is it affecting it in a negative way that people don't know how to have that inner communication?
Well, I think it's the root of all of our problems. Just to put it, look at the political, what's going on right now, and without getting too political and playing our hand here, as to what side we're on. But I think, when you've got a mass of people that are looking at, you got Donald Trump on one side, you had Ben Carson on another for a while. So Carson's a brain surgeon, right here in Johns Hopkins, about 15 minutes from my house. And you've got Trump, who's a businessman who, offends a lot of people. But what it says is that people have lost hope. The system is broken. So I think when you look at politics, you look at religion, you look at ISIS to bring, that whole thing up. Our solution to things is to cut people's heads off on the beach and then videotape it and send it around the world. Yeah. It all really comes down to, regardless of you think this property is mine and we want to take it back because, we've had it for 200 years. It's a religious, political, socioeconomic, all of those things really comes down to communication. It really, and Freud said this, by the time we're 5, we're pretty much formed. And so I don't know. I mean, that seems kind of young, but certainly, I don't know, maybe by the time we're 10. But you see, a big problem, guys, is we don't see people as they are. We see them as we are. So we process things through our own filter. And it's hard to sort of step back and to see things for what they are. It's like, I'm sure you guys have heard of it. If you haven't read it, The 5 Love Languages. Yep. Great book. And I think I think it should be a required read. We all have different love languages. And so if I'm speaking number 3 and you're speaking number 1, then we're going to have a problem. So until we get on that same page and we're dealing at the same level, which again is political, religious, socioeconomic, all of these things. I mean, look what's going on now with this whole Supreme Court thing with Scalia's death, right? Everybody's jockeying now. The Republicans are already saying that Obama, it's not his right to pick the next justice because he's a lame duck. And so come on. I mean, all this posturing nonsense that goes on and it's played out on the news every single night. It's really disgraceful. It really is. And so the gridlock and everything else that goes on, but it's a breakdown in the communication process is what it's all about at its most simplistic form.
Yeah, well, your event's right next to the White House. Let's get you in there and have a conversation.
There you go.
With them, right?
It's funny you say that though, because that was my goal as a child when everybody else wanted to be a fireman or a trash man or whatever little boys want to be, army men. I wanted to be the president. And I've consulted on some political campaigns. I've been asked to run for governor or Congress or mayor, things like that. It's not that I'm too old. I mean, Reagan, I think, was 70 when he either was elected or ran the first time. I'm not too old to do it. I think I'm better off on the outside, sort of trying to make almost like, it's interesting with Trump. I don't really know. I mean, he would take it. I mean, his ego is so big that he'll take it if he gets the nomination and would win. But I don't know that he ever really wanted it. I mean, he can stir up the pot, right?
Yeah, like that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. It's funny with the marketing stuff. Now I just tell people, let's Trumpetize it. It's becoming a verb. The guy's a master at marketing. Because think about him, to sort of digress for a second. He doesn't really give a, what people think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you're going to love him, you're going to hate him, but you are going to recognize him, right?
Correct.
It's hard to ignore that guy. And he's also he doesn't care if you talk about his hair or whatever it is that people talk about. They do, right? But he doesn't care. So, there's a guy I admire for really, truly being who he is.
Right.
And just putting it out there. You've got to respect them. I mean, so. Anyway, I don't want to get too political.
No.
Yeah, I mean, but going back to what you were saying, I mean, he's had that in our communication. He's okay with himself. It doesn't matter what you're saying because he's saying all the right things.
That's right. Yeah, he's probably taking it to the extreme, right?
Yeah.
But anyway.
So you brought up, good points about, how communication can help politics and, you mentioned families. What are the interests you want to tackle with this book or with your vision? Is it politics? Is it, what are some things that you want to do with it?
I think, what I ultimately want to do is turn the book into a television show.
Okay.
And I've had some folks reach out to me. Think about this, guys. I don't know of any middle-aged white guys out there talking about their feelings.
Right.
And Dr. Phil, that's not what he does. It's not what Dr. Oz does. They've got their own platforms. One's an MD, one's a PhD. Or I don't know, Phil might be a psychiatrist and maybe he is an MD as well, but it doesn't matter. I mean, they're not really, he and Robin, had this perfect marriage, right? Yeah, of course, for 35 years or whatever their deal is, they make it work for them. And, so I'm willing to be the middle-aged white guy who talks about his feelings. So I would like to, and we've had some interest. I've had some Hollywood types reach out to us because I think that I've been blessed with kind of a unique skill set, and that not only have I crafted this message, but I can articulate it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I can write, I can speak, I'm on stage, I'm in front of the camera, I'm behind the microphone, all the stuff that I do. And when I started acting and modeling, which was a very bizarre thing, I thought, what the hell am I doing here? Why am I doing this? Now it makes sense because it's made me, I've been speaking in public since I was 16 years old professionally. And, but now it all makes sense. It's come full circle to be able to do this. So to answer your question, Zach, I'd like to turn it into a book. Nice. And I would like to, we've talked about doing a series because we can take this and we can break it down. So we can say communicating to win for engineers. For example, take an industry where they're typically not the most extroverted folks. And I look at the people that reach out to me, for example, on LinkedIn, and I get a lot of quote unquote, no offense to anybody, what we would call geeks, which is probably a politically correct term at these days because you got the geek squad, right?
Yeah.
So they legitimize, it's cool to be a geek. And so we get a lot of these people who are not typically thought of. There are exceptions to every rule as good communicators. And so one of the things we've talked about doing is kind of breaking it down and working with different groups. So you could do communicating to win for families. You could do communicating to win for school kids and different professions. So, and the other thing I think I would like to do, Zach, and I'm working on this, I just had something come in today, is I've decided I'm going to make mental illness my cause. Mm. And I think we need to put a face on that. It affects over 450 million people.
Yeah.
And cancer gets a lot of attention, as you guys know, and heart disease gets a lot of attention. Mental illness does not. But think about it. Think of all these, like Sandy Hook and Columbine and all these massacres that have occurred. If you guys look back, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, we can do the research, I think they were all boys. Mm-hmm. I mean, there may have been a girl involved somehow in there, but they were all boys.
They were, yeah.
And they were, I think, without exception, all from broken homes. I mean, the kid at Sandy Hook, I don't know if he shot his mother and then he went off to school or whatever, but they were all from broken homes. They all had issues. And again, I apply this to my own son, who's been hospitalized 3 times, starting at age 13. So what happens in a situation like that, kids are the most powerless among us. Think about that, right? They don't really have a vote. And rarely do we ask their opinion.
Right.
So what happens in a situation is they become frustrated. They can't express themselves, and then you have an explosion. I mean, it's very raw form. It's obviously a lot more complicated than that, but we don't talk about it. Look at Robin Williams. Okay, so look at his suicide. There's a guy with you wouldn't think it would be a money issue,
right?
And yet he felt that the only solution was to kill himself. I mean, so we need to. And I thought when you have guys like that, celebrated people that are doing that kind of stuff, it always tends to get more attention, but then it dies down.
Yeah,
right? I haven't heard anything about that. Other than, one side of the family suing the other for his money or something like that. Yeah. But other than that, you don't really hear anything about it.
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, mental illness is such a huge topic right now. It's a huge topic. It's the elephant in the room and nobody wants to talk about it.
Correct.
And like you said, you want to find the face to it, but unfortunately when the face appears, they're already gone out of our world. And, it's going to take that one person to step forward when they're willing to communicate their feelings to the world. But first they have to have that inner communication. And
I'm willing to be that face, Justin. Yeah. I'm really we're working on some things right now that I'm willing to be the face of that. My youngest daughter was diagnosed with epilepsy when she was 3. Wow. And she just outgrew it. So she just she's 13 now and she just came off her medication.
That's awesome.
So there are a lot of things that I could attach myself to that. But I think mental illness is in a lot of ways like being an alcoholic. You're never cured. Mm-hmm. It's an incredibly slippery slope. And as a father, I deal with it all the time because when my son has a stressor in his life that the 3 of us, maybe we go out one night and have too much to drink, or we go out and play racquetball, or we do something to get rid of that. People who are dealing with that can't. And, listen, I've had mornings. We've all had these mornings think where, I don't want to do this anymore, or how do I go on, or boy, everything looks like it's terrible and there's no way out. But those folks just can't see really any opportunity beyond that. But it's a very slippery slope. Right. It's a very slippery slope.
You had said, we seem to see other people through our filter.
Yep.
How would you suggest and communication is key, what we've been talking about this whole interview. How do we overcome communicating to people effectively when we see them through our filter?
It's a tough one because I think the one thing that we need to do is we always need to step back and think about. I'll give you an example. I had a friend who we were personal friends. Our kids went to school together, and I don't think she's going to be listening to this, but it's okay if she does. We were social media friends, and this person never really supported anything that I did. And I had my thoughts behind it. I'll keep them to myself, but I think God blessed me with a pretty good intuition, and I have a strong sense of why this person did that. And I decided it was best for me, to remove this person from my sphere. Mm-hmm. And I remember her calling me up and saying, "Did you unfriend me?" Like, what? And I said, I did. I said, "We're not friends. We're acquaintances. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. That's okay." I said, "But you don't really support anything that I do. You don't support my message." I almost felt, you guys know these people. They're always like, they don't even have to say anything, but you feel it. I mean, that intuition's like, they're like, "Oh God, there goes Zach again."
Yeah, I know, Justin,
kind of a thing. Well, I'm sorry.
No, don't try to.
But I guess maybe I have a more innate sense of that. And this was one of those people. And I just thought, the evidence piled up. And I decided to do that. And I thought it through, and I thought, okay, she's going to call me at some point, whether it's 6 days or 6 months or 6 weeks or whatever. She'll realize that we're not connected anymore on Facebook. And she did. And I was very honest with her. And I said, "Listen, we're good. We're acquaintances. We're not really friends." And about 2 weeks ago, and this went on for, I guess we were disconnected for over a year, maybe 2. And she sent me a text the other day and she said, "I miss you. I'm going to send you a friend request again." And I said, "Oh, great." And that's all I was accepting. Yeah. I was accepting, but I think it's all about really for us establishing boundaries. Okay. I mean, we get caught in so many ruts. It's very interesting. Like, for example, I'm bigger in London than I am in Baltimore. And let me tell you why. It's hard for people somebody told me this, and I think it's so true. It's hard to reinvent yourself when you're established. Right. So you become, I don't know you guys personally, but people around you and your neighbors identify you as, that guy, whatever it is that you're into. And for me, so whether it's the basketball coach or Olivia's dad or the guy that cuts his grass in his Kohans, whoever, I'm that guy. I do that, by the way. I'm that guy. And so when you step out of yourself and you now are an author or you're a speaker or, my God, you're the voice of National Geographic, how cool is that? Let's talk about the coolest things. I mean, I'm still pinching myself on that deal.
But really cool.
That really goes to the whole thing about people having a hard time seeing you for who you are.
Right.
And I think part of it, I really do. I think there are a lot of unhappy people in the world, guys. There are a lot of people who get up and go to jobs they don't like every day. They lay down with people in bed at night that they don't want to lay down with. Mm-hmm. And yet we just sort of suck it up, or we carry on because we have to. Duty, obligation, whatever it is. And I just think when you guys break out of that, suddenly I've written a book. And I didn't think it was a big deal. I'll confess to you, I was talking to a friend of mine. I said, "Mark, it's a big deal that I wrote this book." And he said, "Bob, are you kidding me? Only 0.05, and I'm not a math whiz, but I think it's 1 in 50,000 people have written a book."
Wow.
If you walk in Barnes & Noble, you think everybo's written a book, right? Even your neighbor. Yeah. My neighbor's got one here on the shelf. I know it. I'm going to find it. Yep. 1 in 50,000 people have written a book. And that really, I was like, wow, that's a pretty cool club.
Yeah.
But think about, I have to tell you, if I stopped and thought about it, I might know 2 people. One lawyer, a friend of mine, wrote a book on history. Fred's a huge history buff, and he wrote one of those 800-page books on John Quincy Adams or something that, but he's a scholarly guy. But other than that, do you guys know anybody that's written a book? I mean, I don't really know.
Just Pam.
Yeah, we know. I probably know one other person.
Because of what you guys do, maybe it's a little bit different, right?
Yeah. Right. I mean, it's
a lot.
Not a lot for sure. I mean, and I mean, I've thought about it, and it's just a daunting task, and I think that's why it stays 1 out of 50,000.
It is really, Justin, a daunting task. That's why people. Now, second time will be easier, and the third, and so forth. So I've sort of got it down now, and I'm one of those guys I can sit down and sort of bang it out. I write based on my inspiration, and I just can sit down. If I could type faster, your brain works faster than your fingers do. I could really crank it out. But it is a select club. It's a select pool of people that do it. But think about all those people. As I said, it's funny. I just moved back in the fall. And I lived in a really old historic neighborhood in Baltimore for about 15 years. And it got to the point where the neighbors weren't even speaking to me, particularly after my marriage ended. I reinvented myself. Yet I came out one day to get in my car and one of my neighbors said, "Hey, did I see you in House of Cards?" And I was like, "Oh, really?" And I just said, "Yeah, that was me." Or they'll say, "Is that you in that commercial?" And I'll say, "Yep, it's me." And I get in the car and I just go. And it's like, I'm okay to be that guy. It's like, oh, yeah, he's my neighbor sort of a thing. But beyond that, and I just don't have any tolerance for that. So it's a matter of people seeing me as, they see me and not really seeing me for who I am and what I've gone through, and they're living their lives and their unhappiness and whatever else is going on, in the world.
Sure. One thing we always try to do with what we do here is teach at least one lesson that people can take and do something with it immediately. And obviously we're talking about communicating right now and communication in general. What would be, if there was one word of advice or one tip or the first step that you need to take to become better at communicating, whether it's with yourself or with others, what would be that first step? And if somebody's listening right now who has a hard time doing it, what would be that first step to really overcome those obstacles?
You mean after they read my book?
After they read your book, of course.
And it's on Audible now too, so they can download it for like $6, which is and it's in my own voice.
Yeah, which is awesome because you have a great voice, which is obviously why you're on National Geographic now, which is amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. I would say to you guys, and I'll come back. Let's come full circle with this whole thing. I really think communicating to yourself. I really think make yourself happy first. Think about the airplane guys when they take off and the steward and they're going through their drill, and right when they tell you when the oxygen thing comes out of the ceiling, who did they tell you to put it on first?
Person. Yeah, yourself. I was about to say the person next to you, which is completely wrong. I would be the worst person on a plane.
Completely wrong. See, Zach got it. Good thing you guys aren't in the same plane.
I know, He'll be trying to cover me while I'm trying to cover myself.
Yeah, but it's putting it on yourself first.
Right.
It's taking care of yourself first. It's okay to say no. I mean, practice saying no. So what I would tell people to do is to think about, and it sounds selfish, which is probably why we don't do it. Say, am I happy? Am I doing what makes me happy? Do I make my family happy? Do I make those around me happy with who I am, with what I'm doing? My kids and I sat down to dinner about a month or so ago. We're sitting at dinner and I said, "Hey guys, I have a question for you." And everybody gets nervous or they say, "Well, we need to talk." That kind of a thing. And I said, "Do you think I'm a good father?" And they both chimed in at the same time, boy and a girl, 13 and 15. And they said, "You're a great dad," without missing a beat. And then I said, "Okay, well, is there anything I can do better? Is there anything that you wish I didn't do?" We don't have those conversations. We don't. We can't be self-deprecating enough to say, is there something I could do better? Is there something you wish I didn't do, or what? So I would encourage people after they read the book or listen to the book or whatever they do to do that self-examination.
Yeah, that's great.
To really say, am I happy? Think about how daunting this is and how risky. Let's use that word. Think about how risky this is. You sit down with your spouse and you say, "Can we talk?" It's like my son, who's now 29, said to me one day, he said, "Dad, we need to talk." And I was convinced it was either the gay conversation, which is fine, or I need money, or, whatever. But whatever somebody comes to you and says, "We need to talk," right? Normally, that's not a good thing.
Right. And
he said to me, and Taylor's mentioned in the book, he said, "Dad, I don't want your life." And I was like, wow. And I thought about it for a second. I thought, first of all, I was like, wow, he's got a lot of guts. Got a lot of guts saying that to me, kid. Yeah. No, I said, "Taylor, I don't know that I wanted my life, but I've made the most of my life." But I said, if the fact that you can come to me as my son and feel comfortable saying, "Dad, I don't want to be like you." And it wasn't that. It wasn't, "I don't want to be you." This is a kid now who doesn't even know if he's going to get married. Doesn't know if he wants to have children. And he's an awesome coach. He's a great kid. He'd be an awesome dad. But my kids have lived through some pretty bad experiences when it comes to the marriage thing.
Right.
You see. And so, but I think, and when his mom and I divorced, he came to live with me. I mean, the kid was 12 years old. He said, "Mom, I love you, but I don't like you."
Wow.
And I want to live with Dad. So that takes a lot of guts for a 12-year-old kid to look at his mom and say, "I don't like you."
Yeah.
And I'm going to live with Dad. And so he's
Smart kid.
He's a lot like me. He's the one that really, it's the older one who sort of stayed, who's really developed and had has been crippled by the emotional issues, the baggage that he had to carry all that time. So I think we need to spend more time being a little bit selfish. Gets a bum rap, just like the word sales does. We always think that sales is a negative connotation. You know, getting somebody to buy something they don't need, don't want, or can't afford. There's the sales cycle. And not really. I've always sold through education, but I think we need to sell ourselves on being happier and whatever. We're all motivated by different things. I've never been motivated by money. At times I wish I had, but I'm not. And so there's nothing you can do to sort of reprogram yourself. So I think it's a matter of really finding what makes you happy and run with that.
Awesome.
That's great.
Well, we certainly appreciate your time. And before we kind of wrap things up here, I always like to finish up with 5 rapid questions. Some are fun, some are serious, but I do ask you this. Only answer with one word or one sentence at most.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So the first one is, what's one thing you can't live without?
French fries.
Oh,
That's a good one.
me too.
I love fries, so I feel you there. So this one has 2 answers. What's your favorite and your least favorite word?
Word?
Word.
Oh, this is I don't think I can say it.
No, you can. They don't censor
word.
us if there's only 1 or 2 curse words.
Yeah, it's that word because I think and it's funny too, that word. I read somewhere, maybe you guys have too, that some of the most intelligent, the most successful people love that word.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's something about that word. It covers all the bases. I love to get into discussions with women about that word, but it's all I'll do is say to you, it's that word. I think it's just really an awesome word.
It is.
Oh, the other word that I really like, I'm sorry, is vitality. And I'll tell you why. I had a guy who reached out to me at times. He writes for a local publication, the Baltimore Business Journal. And we got together. He saw me somewhere online and he said, can we meet? He said, Bob, you have a vitality about you. And I love that. I don't hear it very often. Maybe you guys do. Vitality is not a word that you hear describing somebody very often.
Yeah.
And it's such a great word. I mean, obviously it means energy. I mean, we know what vitality means, but it's such a great word. So that word and the vitality word.
That's all. I'm going to start using.
I know,
I'm going to start using vitality more often.
Yeah, because you use the other one, right?
That's
That's not a problem.
The next one here is, why are you successful?
The first word that came to my mind was tenacity. Tenacity came to my mind because I refuse to accept no. I look at everybody the same. I come from a very, very, very working class background. Before my dad was homeless, he drove a taxi cab. Yeah. And my mother was a legal secretary for years. And I think it's my tenacity. Success is a relative term. I will tell you that. I've had success in my life. We all define it differently. But I would say the tenacity gets me through and has gotten me through to where I am now.
Awesome. I like that. I like it a lot. Now, as we discussed earlier, you're one of the few people who have written your life's work in a book and you will leave behind a lasting impression forever. Yep. So this one is, let's pretend the book doesn't exist. By the way, it's Communicating to Win. Make sure you get it. It's also on audible.com.
Yep.
So if you never wrote your book, what would be your one word of advice that you would leave behind for the world to hear?
I would say be true to yourself. If I hadn't written the book, I would say that ultimately as life, the 50s is a great decade. It really is. A lot of things come together in your 50s. You still have the energy. You've made mistakes. You have time to correct them. You have time to. Did you guys know this or not? I'm sure you've read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, but most men don't achieve their true success until after age 50.
Right.
I saw something the other day online that Warren Buffett didn't start really making money until he was like 51.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
51. Yep. And the guy's a gazillionaire, billionaire. Yep. So I think there's hope for me yet. I mean, that really, but, I think be true to yourself is the one thing that I would say if I hadn't written this book is to, and hopefully people are able to find that.
Love it.
That's good.
And this last one, the name of this podcast is the Growth Now Movement. So it's all about personal and professional growth.
Yep.
So I'll just wrap it up with, what's your biggest moment of growth, whether it be personally or professionally?
Biggest tragedies in my life, guys, and I say it in the book, but my areas of biggest growth have really been my divorces, my marriage and my divorces. And my favorite quote, the Chinese proverb, is there are two that I really like that I can leave you with. There's great opportunity in pain. Great opportunity in pain. And Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. And so those two really go hand in hand. You can marry those two. I try to live by them. Most people can't. Guys, think about when we have our most growth. When is it? Is it when things are going great and we're at the height of our career and you're driving the car you want, you're dating the girl that you want, you're living where you want? Relatively speaking, are you doing the self-examination? No. It's when the hits the fan.
Right.
That you're saying, this is awful. And hopefully you can go deep. Men are not really known for doing the emotional heavy lifting. I want to change that. I really, when I look at the eyeballs that are on me, when we do the demographics, the people that follow me are mostly women, like 80%, ages 25 to 65.
Wow.
So that's a pretty wide group.
That is huge.
Yeah.
So I think we want really to get more to the men. I think the cool thing about me too, I don't argue. That's the one thing too I teach people. We so often try to make others wrong, and we try to make them responsible and accountable for our happiness.
Wow.
And you can't think about when you're in a discussion with somebody and you say, we've all done this. I've done this. I mean, I wrote the book because of all these things. Say, well, you don't give me what I want. Or you never do this. Or you don't do that. Or think about, the constant badgering of you don't, why don't you? Why can't you? Maybe forget about all that stuff. Because you were the person that's responsible. So all we can say, guys, if we turn that around is say, I need when I walk in the door, I want a big hug. I don't want you to look at the mail. Or when I want this, instead of saying, hey, Zach, every day when you walk in, is the mail more important to me? Because that puts him on the defensive.
Right.
Yeah.
But if I say, honey, when I walk in, I've had a hard day. Can I just have a hug? Who's going to say no to that?
Yeah.
Right.
And you know what? Quite frankly, if they do, then you're probably in the wrong relationship.
Yeah.
And that's the other piece of it too. That goes back to that asking for what we want in a nice way, in a non-threatening way. Great startup say, I really need this from you. Or, then you get into, I don't know, let's say I need a whatever, and I'd like to have that whatever 7 days a week. And the other person says, 7 days a week is a lot. How's 3? And then he's, oh, okay. But you know what, guys? What we've done here is we've set the expectations.
Right.
You're not going to have that 7 days a week. You're going to have it. I love seafood. So, hey, honey, can we have seafood 7 days a week? Maybe 3 or 4. Is that okay? Yeah, I can live with that.
Right.
Now we set the stage. We know the expectations. She knows what I want, and I know what to expect. I'm not going to go home like, she never makes salmon. Right? So, guys, I think the whole thing, too, is really not only setting those expectations, articulating what you want and need. That word right there, articulation, we don't articulate things very well. A lot of us are not very articulate, let's be honest, but we can work on our articulation.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's this is not rocket science. It's really not. The Wall Street Journal is written at a 3rd grade level. So what I'm talking to you guys about, what we're talking about right now, is not rocket science. This is really basic stuff. This is the foundation on which everything else is built. Success and happiness and prosperity and just all of those things. So they're my final thoughts.
Awesome.
That's great.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time, Bob. And before we wrap everything up completely, if anybody wants to get a hold of you, book you for any events, whatever it may be, wants to grab your book or even have a conversation with you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
The best way to get me, they can go to my website. The other thing that people are amazed about, and thank you for asking the question, is I'm extremely accessible. Justin, you know how accessible I am.
Yeah.
I respond to, I read something the other day that, what's her name? Nigella Lawson or something, the cook in Australia. You guys know who she is? Nigella Lawson, I think is her name.
No.
Anyway, she's a celebrity chef, and she wrote an article on branding, and she talked about she is her own brand. And she said, I do my own tweeting and whatever it is that whatever her social media outlet is. I'm very accessible. People are amazed. I just posted on Facebook a new business card. My cell phone's there. If you want to get to me, you can get to me. So people can go to bobpaff.com. You can certainly Google me. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook. I don't have the other thing that I hope I never have to have this is that public page or public figure thing. One of the things I think that sets me apart, guys, is my accessibility. Mm-hmm. And I've had a couple crazies, but it goes with the territory.
Yeah,
your neighbors can be crazy.
It's true,
right? And so if somebody's going to be crazy this 2,000 miles away and thinks that they're in love with me or whatever it is, or hates me, then they're entitled to that. And so unless it becomes a danger to myself and my family, but bobpaff.com, people can Google me, you can go on LinkedIn, you can go on Facebook, and you can get to me. I am on 2 national speaker bureaus, so I do travel and talk on various topics, and we customize all the talks. So there's nothing about me that's boilerplate.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Yes, and guys, it takes a village. So I really appreciate you, and I'm so grateful to you. And because I can't do this by myself, I couldn't have sold over 4,000 books by myself. I'm very, very grateful for anything anybody does for me. And I never want to lose sight of that, the gratitude. It's so easy to say please and thank you and all those things that we don't do. And so I tell people, try to find ways to say please and thank you and I'm sorry and whatever it is. And very simple.
Absolutely. And to go to your accessibility, you're telling the truth, and I thank you for responding to my message on Instagram. That's a first.
I might be a little slow, Justin. I'm usually very, very good.
No, you're good. You're good. And thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for your message, because it truly is important. And I will, obviously this all happened rather quickly with you, but I will be getting your book and I'll be diving in.
Me too.
Just thank you so much for your time, because we know it's valuable and we appreciate everything you said.
Thank you.
And guys,
much.
whatever we can do, I wish you the best of luck. Any way that we can help you get your message out and get what you guys are doing. This was great. I love the dialogue. And the time flies by because there's so many other things that we can tackle.
It does.
Yeah.
But it's great stuff and I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, guys.
Thanks, Bob.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We really hope that you took something away from this episode, whether it's better internal communication or better external communication. If you guys like what you hear here and you want to join the Growth Now movement, head over to Facebook and like us over there. Thank you so much, and we'll see you guys then.
Thank you for listening and joining the Growth Now movement. This podcast was created to get you to where you want to go. Hopefully it helps as you take action on your Growth Now journey.